It is hilarious to me how many authors approach to following up to a masterpiece is just to kind of create something completely unpalatable. The Unconsoled is a prime example of this, a book that confused critics so much when it was released that it was described as having invented its own category of badness. And then subsequently it was ranked as the third best novel between 1980 and 2005. Both of these descriptions, in my opinion, are wrong, as is the puzzling inclusion of The Unconsoled on a list of the 20th century's most enjoyable books to read. If this is what an enjoyable read is, my definition of enjoyable is very different to everyone else's. This is nonetheless a beguiling novel and a fascinating entry into Ishiguro's bibliography. I'm Eddie, by the way. We're kind of going through each of Ishiguro's novels in turn. Stick around if you want to see all of that. This is not a spoiler-free review. Not that it's very easy to have spoilers for a book that makes as little sense as this one. This novel kind of rejects a coherent explanation of what its plot is, so bear with me, we'll get it. We'll do our best. Ostensibly, we're following the story of Ryder, a world-class pianist who's turned up in this unnamed European city. When he arrives, he finds himself struggling to remember even basic details of his trip, including any of the details of the itinerary that Hoffman, the manager of a hotel, and Miss Stratman, the person who is running the concert, have kind of put together for him. He encounters an elderly porter named Gustav who's having difficulties with his daughter and grandson. He explains to Ryder he hasn't spoken to his daughter since she was a child, even though they actually interact quite regularly. He hopes that Ryder, as an outsider, can help with this issue. Ryder's role in the city does not seem to be straightforwardly as a travelling pianist. In fact, his experience isn't straightforward in literally any way. It becomes clear to him that the city is at some kind of turning point, but it's never really clearly defined what that turning point is. Some members of the town believe they've been led astray by a man named Christoph, and that Ryder is the man who's going to inspire them to go back onto the right path. Again, what that path is, we don't really know. He moves from encounter to encounter with different members of the community, trying to kind of work out what it is that he's actually there for in the first place. It's almost like a dreamlike state, and very quickly the reader finds out that things aren't quite what they seem. Doors in a ballroom lead to a hotel halfway across the town. Ryder can hear journalists talking about what a dupe he is, like right to his face, just like, look at this idiot standing here, we're going to completely trick him, and he's just like, I don't need to comment on that, you know, no comment. Moreover, he can hear conversations with characters that are not in the room, they're halfway across the street. He can also kind of get an insight into what people are thinking without them actually having to say it to him, or potentially this is just what he projects that they are thinking. Most strikingly, when he meets Gustav's daughter Sophie, she turns out to actually be his partner. I'm not saying he gets together with her, I'm saying that she already is his partner, he's just forgotten about it, and likewise Boris is his son. Ryder is silent and brooding with his son Boris, and he's very cruel to Sophie. The three are meant to be moving in together but keep getting divided by random events, like Sophie goes down a road and then vanishes. He runs into his old school friends seemingly at random, who supposedly have been living in this city for years, and he already knew that, but he obviously did not remember that. We also see his relationship with both them and his own parents played out in the interactions of other characters within the city, including through an old drunk conductor named Brodsky and a young pianist named Stephen, who's unable to live up to what his parents expect from him. It's not like A Christmas Carol. It's not like they're a ghost of his past and his future, but they do bear striking resemblances to what you might imagine both to be. But nonetheless, they are different. They are categorically different people. It's not him. Another issue he has is his parents are coming to the concert, but he is constantly unaware of the details of their arrival and is very concerned about this. Eventually, the night of the concert itself is an absolute failure, with Brodsky's disgrace continued, Stephen failing to win his parents' approval, even though the audience gives him a rapturous reception, and Ryder doesn't even get to do his piano recital. I guess the minor Ishiguro Switchiguro is that his parents are revealed to have never been coming to the conference at all. He just kind of assumed they would be coming, or I guess hoped that they would be coming. Seemingly this happens every time he goes to a concert, and he's doomed to a cycle of repetition of disappointment. Following the death of Sophie's father, Gustav, he chooses to move on to Helsinki, being shut out or unable to join in their grief. So I guess the main theme for this book is what the heck is going on? It's a fair question. The initial obvious answer is that this seems to be some kind of dream state, right? Time doesn't seem to apply in any logical way. The concert itself is held for no clear reason in the early hours of the morning, and he goes into a room, has a conversation with a woman, comes out, and breakfast is being served. Likewise, space is disjointed. He realises at one point that his hotel room is actually his childhood bedroom in Worcestershire. Most of all the random appearances from people from various stages in Ryder's life is very dreamlike. They seem to appear at the exact time to kind of knock him off whatever he's trying to do. It's a clear indicator that real world logic doesn't really apply in this city. And indeed, the parallels between Ryder and other characters in the story definitely do imply a dreamlike approach. Brodsky, an old drunken conductor who's originally from out of town, is unable to regain his old love due to a wound that has been festering in his person for years and years. The book goes to great lengths to emphasise this is not a metaphorical wound. This is literally a stump where his leg was. But at the same time, it does clearly have a connection to Ryder's own wound, his relationship with his parents. Stephen clearly too ties into this. His inability to live up to what his parents want from him kind of ties into this own thing in Ryder's own life. I mean, he's literally said to be a talented pianist by the best pianist around, and his parents are still like, nah, amateur hour, never going to have the spark you need, kid. Some critics have found this particular reading of The Unconsoled to be why they can't get into the book. They think we don't get enough of Ryder's inner life, and because of that we're not able to interpret the dream world that's around him. Like, there's nothing more boring than reading about someone else's dream is the phrase. I don't actually think that's true though. Dreams are fascinating. Who doesn't like hearing about other people's dreams? Why is this like a thing? Is it really that boring? I don't know, man. I like dreams. I think Ishiguro is very good at showing us who Ryder is for his relationship with other characters. I think it's a very interesting way to tell a story. Also, it's not the be-all and end-all of what The Unconsoled is about. It's clearly not limited by the rules of a dream. That take ignores the external world that clearly exists outside of Ryder's personalised dream state, It's interesting to look at this through setting and place in the novel. Though the story is in Europe, it's never specified which city it's in. In fact, it's much easier to kind of know which city it isn't rather than which city it is. Like, many real places are mentioned: England, France, Germany, Poland, which kind of all preclude them from being the place where it's set. Indeed, in the city, there's this cafe, this Hungarian cafe, which again suggests it's not in Hungary. Interestingly, in this cafe, the members of the group sing loudly in Hungarian, and yet Ryder identifies it as being nonsense. It's not actually the language. This kind of adds to our sense of placelessness that carries throughout the novel. Interestingly, Ryder himself is able to sing along at one point and kind of sees himself as singing in Hungarian. Does that mean he's Hungarian? Does that mean he can speak Hungarian? I don't think so, but it just kind of adds to this vibe, We know it's a provincial town, a town that's stuck in its own past and never thinks it's going to evolve into a better city along the lines of Frankfurt or Antwerp or kind of a mid-sized European city. It therefore comes to hold a place as like a globalized European city, right? It doesn't have to be a specific place. That's kind of the issue with globalization, that everywhere kind of gets subsumed into these same networks. Not to say that this is a critique of globalization, like that's not necessarily what Ishiguro is going for. I think it is, but it might not be. Debates that people have over the Sattler Monument, which Ryder is photographed kind of gesturing towards the front of a newspaper, like, I look at this Sattler Monument. Grrr, Sattler Monument. Sattler Monument. We love a Sattler Monument. Yeah, that could slot in anywhere. That could slot in anywhere, right? Like, that could be about any town. Like a monument towards a direction the city could have gone in. That's always gonna flare up some tension. Indeed, a lot of the time, Ryder's presence in this novel seems far more like that of a politician than of a pianist. You kind of see this as a reflection on the way that performance has become essential to politics, potentially. There's a very amusing description of the concert that he's supposedly going to run, in which there's going to be a giant electronic board behind him which is going to relay Q&A questions from the audience and his answers, and they're going to flare up. Like, when Stratman's talking about that, he barely even mentions the fact that Ryder's actually going to be playing the piano at this thing. The spectacle is the lead. The music is the footnote. Ryder's relationship with his son and Sophie throughout the novel are definitely worth picking up on. At the start of the novel, he doesn't even know them. He doesn't recognise them when he goes into the cafe and sees them for the first time. But as the story goes on, we discover this is a pretty fraught relationship, a pretty tense relationship. Sophie frequently disappears throughout the novel. She feels uncomfortable around the kind of elites that he's associating with in the town. She looks to Ryder to provide a support, which he is just not willing to do. Some critics have read their relationship as one of infidelity, in which Sophie has been unfaithful and which Boris is not actually Ryder's son. It's a take. He gives Boris a gift at one point in the narrative. I say gift, it's not really a gift, it's like a handy book which tells him how to do like some plastering, you know? It's falling apart, like it's tearing apart at the seams. Sure, Boris is revealed to be not very good at bathroom tiling over the novel, but also, mate, hire a contractor, right? Like, you don't get your kid to do the bathroom tiling. Or maybe you do. Anyway, the manual is falling apart, but Boris treats it as this incredible gift that his father has given him. It shows you how to do everything, he says repeatedly throughout the novel. Just like my childhood voice. It shows you how to do everything. It really does. It shows you how to do everything. Ryder eventually snaps at him for repeating this throughout the novel, and it's clear that his anger isn't really directed at Boris. It's directed at Sophie. But even if his anger is only directed at Sophie, certainly the response is directed at Boris. He chucks the book across the room, tears it apart, and says, "Look, I never really wanted to give you this book anyway. It was just a rubbish gift that I picked up somewhere. It's not really even a gift." He kind of envisions himself being a bunch of minuscule battles with Sophie across the novel. Maybe he is, I don't know, but it certainly doesn't seem like he actually is. At one point, a neighbour describes Ryder's old apartment as a place in which a couple were always arguing and shouting at each other. That was quite terrifying, really, and Ryder kind of shrugs that off and not very happy with that description. In the end, Sophie and Boris grieve together over the death of Gustav, a character who's kind of stood throughout the novel as a traditional element of his town, an important traditional element. She tells Ryder to step aside, and he does so, very neutrally. He prefers to spend the closing sequence of the novel going around a tram that repeats and repeats around the city, enjoying a good spot of breakfast. I mean, to be fair, tram ride around a city with a breakfast buffet. Mate, could you imagine? He is incapable of being the father that he needs to be for Boris, or the partner that he needs to be for Sophie. But there's breakfast, so that doesn't really matter to him in the moment. He knows he's going to be moving on soon. The Unconsoled is a really interesting book to me. It poses the question of how do you do an Ishiguro novel if your main character doesn't really have a coherently working memory? Those who have followed through on this journey with me will know that memory is such an essential element of the novels that he writes. I don't buy into the idea that it's being weird and random for weird and random's sake. That's not true. Ishiguro has crafted a very carefully plotted novel here. Is it easy to get through? No. Is it rewarding? I'd say more rewarding than not. It's a fun entry in the bibliography, an unusual one, but a fun one for sure. Let me know whether you think it's like the worst book ever written or the best book ever written in the comments below. Let me know if you think it's among Ishiguro's best or his worst novels. And next we're going to talk about When We Are Orphans, a book often considered one of the lesser works in Ishiguro's catalogue. Do we agree with that? I don't know. Let's find out in a month. Okay, see you. Bye.